A Manderville is more than flesh and bone. He is vigor, compassion, honor, a gentleman for all seasons. This is why we like to honor him and all the family here on the Manderville Minute. Welcome, one and all, young and old, to the Manderville Minute, your podcast for everything gentlemanly in Final Fantasy XIV. I cannot keep that going. Hi, I'm Basil, and I'm here to crack the case.
I'm Anna, and I have a mighty need for more Urion J. Hildibrand interactions.
And I'm Tobias, the number one Nashu Mhakaracca stan in all of Eorzea.
So yes, hello, welcome to the Manderville Minute. Totally not the Carbuncle Chronicle at all.
I don't know what you're talking about. We've been here every single month, extolling the virtues of the Manderville family and the Gold Saucer and everything they've done for the glorious jewel in the desert, Ul'dah.
It's true. They are, in fact, the singular, the exception that proves the rule that billionaires are terrible. Capitalism is A-okay as long as Godbert's in charge.
As long as you're not wearing pants, it's perfectly fine.
I'm not sure we want to see any billionaires nowadays not wearing pants.
I mean, I don't think Elon Musk could get worse at all, so he might as well just walk around in his tidy whities.
Well, apparently I saw him driving his Tesla truck when I was at KSC like a couple months ago. We had no idea, we're just like, that's a weird looking truck. And then we're like, that guy kind of looks familiar. Come to find out, he was down there for SpaceX launch.
And you didn't see him suplex anything?
No, he kept giving us weird looks because we kept looking at him as we drove by his car. Because we kept passing each other like the whole week we were there. And we'd always look at his car going, that's weird looking.
But you know what's not weird looking? Hildibrand. Nothing weird looking ever happens doing those quests in Final Fantasy XIV. Not once.
A perfect specimen of a man.
It's true. He is a uniquely heroic perfection personified. Well, sort of. One could say they could improve on the model, but that's for further down in the podcast.
They could and did.
Would say, but it was also more additive than replacement. I definitely feel that is it turns out while you cannot improve on perfection, you can also skew it in a different direction and it works out just as well.
Hey, it's Tobias from the Edit Bay. When we first recorded this episode, we forgot to include a spoiler warning. Basil's at Impact this weekend, and while he tried to record some audio remotely, it wasn't the best audio, so I wanted to provide a little something anyway. You'll still be able to hear some of that fun audio as a treat at the end of the show, and if you happen to be at any of his panels this weekend, whether the Final Fantasy XIV fan panel Stival, or the Pain Train, maybe even the Awesome Cast Live Great Anime Dragon Draft, or perhaps the Momocon panel powered by Momocon at MTAC, you should hop on the Awesome Cast Discord and let us know. Anyway, this episode is rated Truffles a la Manderville. We'll be discussing various aspects of the Manderville quest lines, up to and including the ones in Endwalker and the Relic Weapon quest in 6.55. Yeah, 6.55. Yeah, that one. So while we aren't going to spoil much of the MSQ itself, you might want to complete the Manderville quest before listening to this episode. If you care about the story, that is. Which you should, because the Manderville quests are great, as we're about to tell you.
So, here we are. We're talking about Hildibrand Helidor Maximillian Manderville and his raucous adventures in the MMO of our choice, Final Fantasy XIV. I want to ask y'all to kick it off in a broad manner. What are some of the things that you enjoy about experiencing the wonders of the Hildibrand Adventures in Final Fantasy XIV?
Getting to watch my character be super athletic.
I think for me, it was just the surprise. Coming into this, I had heard people talk about the Hildibrand questline, but not knowing what was in store for me. Starting them and just like having that expression of just like, what the is happening continuously all throughout ARR, and even just like the lead up to the end of that quest line was just amazing. And to know that they were going to do that in almost every expansion was beautiful. I hope that Hildibrand never ends, man. It's some of my favorite content in the game just because of what they're doing with this.
It is wild that it feels very much like you're either a Hildibrand fan or you think it's the worst thing ever. It is one of those things. Do you get the joke? Do you think it's funny? Yes or no? And that will color your entire experience with Hildibrand.
Yep, and this was the expansion where we learned who really liked it and who really didn't.
I can see if you had been putting it off for the past 10 years, suddenly being told that you have to do all of the quest lines to get the new relic. I can see why that would put people off. But, that's kind of your own fault for not doing them as they come out, in my opinion. But I guess, like, to your point, like, I get it. Like, I don't always love like Japanese comedy. Sometimes anime comedy, like, it hits or it doesn't hit. It feels a lot of repetitive and a little too slapsticky at times. I think what helps me power through it is just because the game has the audacity to do this, that we go from saving the world and, dealing with the literal avatar of despair and existential dread to suddenly playing sports with the mad scientist robot from FF4. Like, just the whiplash, I think, wins out for me.
And as it turns out, that whiplash was kind of in there from the beginning, at least a little bit. One of the things I really enjoyed about Hildibrand has been sort of the slapstick comedy, where it feels very much the way I've described it ever since first experiencing it back in ARR was that the Hildibrand Adventures, a lot of the Hildibrand cutscenes, a lot of the comedy comes from taking all the action and high octane adventures of, say, you would see in cutscenes for things like Advent Children or Final Fantasy XIV in general, like the super dynamic, for lack of a better word, super anime style cutscene action, or video game cutscene action, really. But then you take that style and you marry it to Looney Tunes, to just absolute Tex Avery comedy. And you squish them together, and that's what Hildibrand is. I remember just one of the first moments when you meet Hildibrand's father, Godbert, and the scenes that play out then, my mind was broken in just the best of ways.
And you meet him in the MSQ, but you don't know who he is.
You do.
Oh, yeah.
But that quest sticks out. If you ask anyone about it before they even touch Hildibrand side quests, you'll say, what's one of the most, like, absurd moments you've encountered so far? They're going to say, oiling up the naked man under the waterfall.
It is a wild moment there in Camp Bronze Lake.
I can't remember that. I think they might have. Did they take that out?
No, it's still there.
Is it? Maybe
it's so early on. I mean, It is so early on that, like, it. If you ever replay through it, like, you'll go, oh, right, because you have to do it, like, 4 or 5 times. You have to click on them and do the oiling. And it's just like, why am I doing this?
And it's a side quest. I don't believe it's remotely required to do.
Are you sure? Okay. I thought it was main scenario.
I can't remember it, honestly. I remember him being the Saint of Nymea, for the Christmas stuff.
Oh, yeah, no.
I couldn't remember that. I remember doing it for the Heavensbird stuff when you have to oil up Hildibrand then, but I honestly can't remember having to do that as part of the main quest. And granted, that was several years ago, so it could be possible that I'm just forgetting, but I think I would remember having to oil up Godbert Manderville several times.
Okay, you're right. It is a side quest. It's called the Monster of Bronze Lake, and it's after you've had to have beat Titan.
Okay. Well, now I'm definitely gonna have to go track that down and do it.
And shoot, I did not realize that's where you got the Meteor Survivor ring.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Wild. I've been using that ring as my secondary ring for like ever.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like on one hand is my eternal bonding ring that gets glamored when I have ear rings to wear, and the other one is the Meteor Survivor ring. So interesting. I did not realize that's where I got it. I couldn't remember. It's been just so long since I've done that, but there you go.
Learning stuff live on the podcast, folks.
Oh yeah. But the character started in 1.0. I'm pretty sure after Yoshida did take over and they were starting to try to make improvements to the MMO itself, trying to make it something worthwhile playing while also sort of building a whole other MMO to the side of it. And he was there to introduce the concept of private in-rooms, because that didn't exist in the game yet.
Yeah, so as you go to each of the inns in the major cities, just like you do now, the innkeepers there, there's sort of a quest line to introduce you and unlock them. And Hildibrand shows up each time on the case for a weapon thief. So it's just kind of funny to see these characters that you maybe see a little bit of. You might remember, Mother Mion from in Gridania and whatnot, but like they had full quest lines there that had like little cutscenes and stuff as part of it.
And the innkeepers actually like have actual lines and not just like the same like 3 lines you use just to enter the inn room.
Yeah.
So that was nice to see. And we'll include a link. Someone did a YouTube video where they just went through all the Hildibrand cutscenes and they put it all in a video that Tobias found on YouTube. And so we'll link to that as well, because I'm glad that someone thought ahead enough to make that archived. Because otherwise, who would have seen it? Unless you played 1.0, you wouldn't.
Yeah, like I'm glad that I wouldn't say I'm glad that I can't play 1.0, but in lieu of being able to, put myself through that misery, I'm glad that some people have had the foresight to archive that stuff for the long term.
And many times they were still just like they are now, but even then it was giving them excuses to like play around with different angles and camera placements. And I know Anna mentioned while we were watching the cutscenes, there's a moment where they wake up your character and it says, I don't think I've seen the angle of them waking us up in that particular angle that they chose to do it in before.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment where Hildibrand finds this random sword and shield, and suddenly they're doing this whole like spin around while he's processing. And we see something similar that's more memeified and an advanced version of that later on. But just him thinking it through while the camera is panning around him in the world and sort of pulling out and almost like a fisheye lens sort of deal. Again, was just something you didn't really see them doing in 14 cutscenes, even in base ARR. Like they were definitely trying some things out whenever it's Hildibrand, and even like stupid things where he's just randomly amongst a group of ruffians, but his clothes are ruffian colored. And he's like, what? This was a perfect disguise. And clearly y'all don't realize that I am in disguise here. I am sorry. I forgot. I am too good at this. But don't worry. This is Hildibrand, agent extraordinaire. I am a gentleman detective. Don't worry. I'm on the case. And
I mean, it fooled Nashu, so it fooled me.
And then I forgot that he finds Neil Van Darnas's spear. And that's what launches him into the sky before we see the results in ARR.
Yeah, I like that whole segment. So that's sort of the first part of all the in-room stuff, and it ends with a weapon thief, like a real hero this time, and not Gilgamesh. So it's a lot shorter than the 2.x Hildibrand series, but it ends with, by this point they knew what they were going to do with Dalamud. You can even see hints of the Dalamud drop in the in-room quest. Like they already knew what they were going to do with it, so they played with it even further by having him talk with Urianger, who's got a prophecy about how to stop the Red Moon from falling. And of course, Hildibrand comes to the conclusion that he's the hero. And you have this really wacky Hildibrand-esque bit with a farmer outside of Blackbrush Station in central Thanalan.
Yep.
And it ends with them spreading bomb ash to keep the bombs away from the fields. And of course, Hildibrand pulls out the Darnas staff, triggers it because it's a Garlean weapon that has a gun on it, because that's what the Garleans do, and launches himself in his first Team Rocket-esque launch into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I just when Urianger showed up, I'm like, wait, what? And like watching them talk to each other, I desperately need like present day current Urianger with present day current Hildibrand, and I want Thancred to show up at some point and going, what the hell is going on? Because that would be some of the best interactions in this game.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I don't think any of the Scions talk with Hildibrand in those quests, right? I don't think any of them are there.
I don't believe
No.
so.
So that's what surprised me. It's like none of the Scions have ever met Hildibrand, at least through the questing with us. So to see Urianger there, I'm like, wait. So at least one of the Scions knows what we're going through with this man. Because I guarantee you, we probably go back and tell Urianger about all of this over like drinks and shit. I'd be like, you're not gonna believe what we're doing now. Aliens.
I mean, according to the quest line, Hildibrand landed on Dalamud, like was stuck in a stasis field for however long it took. Dalamud fell with Hildibrand on it, and he's just been stuck in the dirt for 5-ish years or so until we pull him out.
I thought he made, because when we find him, he's with the zombies.
Well, yeah, he fell when Dalamud fell.
Right, but didn't he like forget, like lose his memory and things, and like live with the zombies
Maybe I'm forgetting.
and
Yes.
teach them the gentleman ways?
Exact.
No, he was like, no. So in 1.0, he finds Nail Van Darnas's gun halberd,
Yes.
Bradamante, and accidentally activates it and launches them into the air.
Correct.
And he lands into Dalamud. It takes him into
Correct.
Dalamud, which locks him in a stasis field. Then, when Dalamud fell, he fell into the desert with the zombies.
Right. So it sounded like to me, maybe I misunderstood what Tobias was saying, like that, like his head was in the sand for 5 years. That wasn't what happened. He was living he had lost his memory. That happened, obviously, and the zombies pulled him out, and he was like, "Oh, I must be one of you," and then communed with them for ever how long until we come along.
This is the level of nitty-gritty you can expect from the Manderville Minute, your monthly podcast for everything gentlemanly in Final Fantasy XIV.
But that's why the joke is when Gilgamesh shows up, what Hildibrand now has, or they're fighting over, is the Bradamante, which is a replica of the Bradamante. I have to assume it's also a play on Prada, but Hildibrand goes places.
I thought it was funny that the little like crown coifs that the zombies wear are the same crown coif that he's wearing at the end of the 1.0. Get this really silly
Yes.
helmet thing. I was wondering like why they focused on that, but it made a lot of sense when I watched the 1.0 cutscene.
Yeah, same. Because I had never seen it before, and we were watching. I went, "Oh, that explains why he looks like that when we meet him."
And what's so wild about Hildibrand is that they didn't have to explain that. They could have just done it and never done the 1.0 stuff, and I would just accept it.
We've learned to accept a lot with these quests.
You know, and this is going into the weeds too, but like, what would have happened if when he fell, he was like sucked up into the coils that are burrowing into the earth? Like, what if he was down in the coils of Bahamut and like in the body of the dragon being reincarnated? What if Bahamut what if it was like Bahabrand or Hildimut or whatever that we thought that would be?
I mean, this ain't the first time we've known someone that has, turned themselves into a dragon of ancient legend. So it wouldn't be that out of place. But, a Hildibrand Bahamut, that's a concept. I'm now kind of sad we didn't get that. Yeah, well, there's always Dontrell.
There's Dontrell. There are more coils, surely, that are spread out, right?
Give it time. We got to go to Mirror City. He'll come with us.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. So, the influences that go into Hildibrand are, like I said, I really feel a lot of it is secretly Looney Tunes, but with action that you would see in a video game cutscene or an anime. I know that I'm going to butcher this, but Inspector Jacques Clouseau from the Pink Panther apparently is one of the big inspirations for the guy. And
it's very goofy, slapsticky style, very inspector sort of comedy. I would recommend those movies still. It's been a while since I've watched the Pink Panther movies, but Hildibrand certainly takes it to another level for sure, but there's this very similar vein there.
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned Looney Tunes, and I think the big thing that stuck out to me is just like Toriyama style shonen manga, like original Dragon Ball or Dr. Slump. It's a little timely that we're mentioning this episode, considering Toriyama passed earlier in the month. But that's all I could think of is like watching like Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump, and even sort of like One Piece, that sort of style of that manga comedy that is just kind of goofy. It's very physical in ways. Sometimes it's very crass, but it's sort of, I think the package like really helps it come together as a comedic whole. I certainly cannot dig like individual scenes, but just because it comes together and it's a joke they really are good at telling over and over again, and really like you get used to the Hildibrand style is the thing. If it was just a one-off quest or even a two-off quest, I wouldn't have liked it as much. But the fact that they keep going, and even to the end of the ARR ones where his mother gets introduced, like that stood out to me. So when you finally see the shaded figure and it's Julianne, and she goes like crazy on everybody, like it's just because it sticks to the joke for so long, really sells it to me.
Oh yeah, and also Detective Conan.
Mm-hmm.
There is there's so much of shoot, they straight up use the concept of Detective Conan's shadow people
Exactly.
as the villains, the secret villains of doing their thing, where it's just that's the same model, just cloaked in shadow, and it doesn't really matter who is the person cloaked in shadow. It could be a guy, a lady, a Gilgamesh. Like, it doesn't really matter who they are. You get the shadow person model whenever they're doing their nefarious deeds before they reveal their true self and then they've uncovered the actual dastardly villain. It is so good, and it works so well where you just accept it. It's just, that's how this rolls, and if you're along for the ride, you're along for the ride. I didn't really watch too much Detective Conan stuff until after Hildibrand, so I was like, oh, that's where they got it. But going through Hildibrand, I didn't question it once. Oh, it's someone sneaking in the shadows. Oh, okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, so much of you have if it were just a one-off joke, it'd be one thing. But then when Godbert shows up, and he's very much a Roshi style Dragon Ball character, the fact they play that straight faced, Julianne shows up, and then just the more they do this, and the more they stick to the guns, even ending in Endwalker with you have that one instance trial where you get to play as Godbert for a bit, like.
Oh, that is one of the best. That is one of the absolute best solo instances in this game. And you were mentioning Julian, like, she's always been one of my favorite characters from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like, the second she was introduced, I was like, I need more of her, and I need her frying pan as a weapon. I need it for, like, my warrior. She is amazing, and I love her.
Yeah, like, these are all like tropey characters and situations. You mentioned like Looney Tunes is just full of slapstick tropes. We talk about the shonen manga, shonen jump ass characters. Like, on their own, there's probably not much to speak of, but again, the package comes together in a satisfying manner, and it sells what it is because of how it never lets go of that joke that makes it continue to work even through Endwalker and in the parts unknown, hopefully.
Well, it was a case of, if memory serves, originally they did all the stuff they did, because they did a bunch of it in ARR. Like, ARR had, like, it was like every patch, it felt like, or almost every patch had at least a little bit of Hildibrand. It was in fact, in every patch.
Yeah.
They had something like 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4,
yeah,
2.5, like all of them, like, and each one had their own like full Hildibrand adventure. They didn't really start toning it down just a little bit until like Heavensward and beyond. And originally, I don't think they were going to do Hildibrand initially in Heavensward. I think they thought they were done. And everyone kept going, when are we getting Hildibrand? When is it happening? Where is Hildibrand? And eventually they had to, okay, we hear you. We're going to put Hildibrand in the game. All right. Okay. We'll do further Hildibrand adventures. Okay. And ever since then, they keep it going. And I think Yoshida thought, well, we had our fun. And I think they were just, everyone was so like, where's our boy? Where's our girl? Where's Hildibrand Nashu? Like, where are they? Hello? And they're like, oh, I guess we're locked into this now, huh?
It really seemed more apparent by Stormblood, because the Hildibrand Heavensward quest, I mean, they're fun. It's a fun thing. But in Stormblood, you get, each episode ends with like a little dance, and it slowly unveils the Manderville Mambo throughout until we get this kind of amazing flash mob style scene that just sells it completely. It feels like they knew what they were doing with each at the end of each episode. And that continues into Endwalker, where every patch gets its own little end credit scene that I think, again, ties the package together in a neat little bow. And all of that is just, it's not present in the Heavensward lines. I can definitely see where maybe they balked a bit at the idea, but then they realized that they were stuck for doing this, in the long run.
Yeah, but I will say, I think Heavensward Hildibrand was my favorite.
Mhm.
Like the story and everything with Gigi and all that, because I really enjoyed, especially towards the end with the dragoons, like the knights, and getting to see Hildibrand essentially limit break was amazing. And I just love that whole found little family thing. Yeah, the drawing in Idleshire, like that. I really enjoyed Heavensward a lot. And while I like Stormblood is fine, and like I said, the Manderville Mambo is one of the best, and I love all those little scenes that we got in the ending of Flash Mob. Like, but I will say, like, I wasn't as invested in that storyline for some reason, and I don't know why. Like, I mean, it was fun. Like, I was watching him get to dress up and everything and whatnot, but that one just didn't hit for me near as much as the others have.
Yeah, I really liked the Stormblood one just because it introduced the concept of the wolf thief, and I'm like, yes, finally, Lupin. Only, it's Lupin, because the Lupin's a race in Aetheris, but the character Lupin, I'm like, wolf thief. I was like, yes, finally, they're gonna catch that Lupin. I was so excited for that. It wasn't quite the same thing, but
yeah, it does feel maybe like a little bit of a reference there as well, because you can't have like a Conan big reference, for instance. You can't have a big Toriyama reference and not at least think about the possibility of Lupin the Third. I think Stormblood is where they introduce Nashu's little stalker too, right? I don't think he was in Heavensward.
Oh, yeah. Andrew's character, yeah.
The little LFO guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of those cutscenes, like in the interstitial dialogues, you can if you walk around the map a bit, you can find them hiding in little places. Fun that they really put that much thought into that joke.
Well, I've really enjoyed all the various sort of side characters that have sort of becoming part of its own, expanded Hildibrand cinematic universe.
Yeah, so maybe I missed this in ARR, but what's the deal with the goblins? There's so many little goblins that show up throughout. It seems to be like a little icon, a little mascot character for Hildibrand. Did I miss why that is, or is it just funny?
Yeah, it's just there. They just picked it.
They just make funny noises, and they kind of hinted at Endwalker maybe being a little goblin alien, but they kind of backtracked from that near the end. But yeah.
But there's also things like, I also do wonder if it's also somewhat reminiscent of, the crow sound effect you'll get in anime when whenever someone's doing something stupid, you'll see a crow fly by and do a caw, which is supposed to indicate they're idiots. I do wonder. Yeah. And shoot, that even happens sometimes in Hildibrand itself. It's not even, but I do wonder if the goblins are sort of have that same sort of functionality where it's just a goofy, weird, little looking creature, but it's a fun one too that they can just throw in there just to be like, yeah. I mean, shoot, the Mandragoras are a thing too in the ARR Hildibrand stuff, so it's not like it's the first time they've used some weird, goofy little creatures to do their thing.
Very true.
And other people that, that also end up becoming more of a thing just sort of in general. And if you're not doing stuff, you may not realize where they originally came from as far as 14 goes. Things like introducing Gilgamesh and Ultros and Typhon. Those were all introduced into 14 with Hildibrand. And Ultros and Typhon have moved on into stuff like in the Gold Saucer and with Blue Mage stuff.
And even with seasonal events, like we've seen Ultros and Typhon during the Moonfire Fair.
I wasn't aware of the Blue Mage stuff.
Yeah. There's they get introduced as part of the Blue Mage stuff, as well as just guys who just happen to weird void scent that happen to just exist in Ul'dah that can be made use of for various things because they're just there for some reason, and the reason is due to events that happen during the Hildibrand. And we've also gotten a few trials thanks to the existence of Hildibrand, especially with Gilgamesh involved mostly.
And 2 of those trials have been the FanFest trials in recent years.
That's right. So what was the first one?
Yojimbo.
Okay. Got it.
The Stormblood trial.
Sense.
Doing that trial at FanFest, and they haven't released the appropriate set of Hildibrand quests to make you realize it's even a possibility. Suddenly seeing, you think you're finding Yojimbo, and the next thing you know, it's Gilgamesh. Out of nowhere.
And we didn't clear it. Like our group of FC people that went, we went and did it together. We did not clear it. I had to go back and essentially party finder it to get a clear.
A real life party finder.
It was difficult. Like I actually just did that fight within the last 2 hours on an alt, and we wiped once. And when you're in a setting with unfamiliar, you don't have your equipment. You're having to quickly set up a hotbar. You're not on your character, your setup. That already adds a level of difficulty. And, we were playing with people we've played with, because we had a bunch of FC people. But, like, just not having the familiarity gives another level of difficulty. And that fight itself is pretty difficult because he brings in mechanics from the other Gilgamesh fights that we've had. And so them, but they're in a different format, and so it's like, oh crap! And then he's adding new things. So that's probably one of my favorite trials, and I'm glad that it's still not super easy. But yeah, all those trials have always been, like I said, nowadays they're not too terribly difficult. Ultros and Typhon, the very first trial back in the day, you would wipe. Like that was almost like extreme level of trial because the mechanics, you had to do them almost perfectly, and if you didn't, you would wipe, especially with the imps and all that. Like they were difficult.
Yeah, I mean, even now the mechanics, you have to do them. You can't ignore them like you can some of the later stuff in the game because you wipe straight up. So I can still see that being a problem even now for sure.
Like I remember when with the imps, we needed at least 3 of the DPS to be perfect. And then one of the DPS could miss one like buff of the bubbles. But they all had to be on the platform and all had to hit Typhon when he went to the middle or we would wipe. It was crazy.
Hildibrand, some of the most fun and also the most challenging content at every expansion.
Yep.
Well, you never know. Sometimes you get a battle on the big bridge. Sometimes it's a battle in the big keep. Where Battle of the Big Bridge wasn't that bad. I mean, there were things that were happening, and I really do think this is one of those cases where 14 iterates on a thing that happened previously in the game, in this case, fighting Gilgamesh in Final Fantasy V, and he's doing a lot of the same tricks, as it were, in battle on the big bridge, especially with him going like, oh, you got me, not, and then doing something else, and then you gotta go refight a harder version of him. But shoot, battling the Big Keep, that was one of those first ones where initially, because you had to fight him and Enkidu at the same time, and they are both doing their own different sets of mechanics, and you kind of had to know what you were doing or you were screwed. And nowadays,
like you had to know not to fight Gilgamesh, because if you were fighting him more than Enkidu, then you were going to fail. And then when people turn into chickens, if they don't run into the wind, they don't turn back quickly enough. And so you would fail because you didn't have DPS up. That one was fun. And
that's just the first phase, as it were. Then you go in, and he's got all these different crazy looking cool AoEs that he's doing.
And then he traps a healer, and you have to run him away. And they didn't know, like, so many tanks don't know that you have to pull him away, because if you don't, you can't free the healer, and they will die.
Yeah, there's just so many little things that nowadays you can somewhat brute force with eye level. It's not nearly as punishing as it was when it first hit, but it's still things that you need to know, and it really will show you that this game still can have teeth when you're not paying attention to it.
And I'm telling you, we've seen the Dawn Trail trailer. There is a very, very big bridge that I fully expect and hope that we get to fight Greg on. Like, I miss him. I want to do that, and it's just ripe for the taking.
Surely. I had a suspicion, and I wasn't entirely sure, so I just looked it up. And in fact, Ohashi in Kugane Ohashi does mean large bridge. I never made that connection, even though I
never have either. That's amazing.
Yes, it is the Kugane Big Bridge. Of course it is.
That's good. And then, man, yeah, and I know Endwalker, of course, is the most. It's going to be the freshest one in our brains because we just did that series. But the sports anime sicko in me was just so happy that they kept, between spiking stuff and hitting home runs and shooting the hoops and just so many different ways that they figured out ways to incorporate like sports maneuvers into it, just because they could. It was dynamic. It was cool looking. It was different than what you would normally do. And just seeing my little Lalfell just doing all these cool action moves like I was in a sports anime was just so choice. So perfect. It was so good. And I still do wonder if the reason why we got such elaborate things in Endwalker was because they tied it to the Manderville relics. And so they went, look, if we have to spend this money and we got to do the Hildibrand stuff, you better be doing it. We spent a lot of money making this stuff happen. You better appreciate Hildibrand, by gum.
Well, I'm sure it was a mix of that, and we went a whole expansion without him, save for one very RNG encounter you can have in Shadowbringers. So, because we had nothing. We didn't have anything for Shadowbringers. We never saw him. And then the last dungeon on the first, because that's the whole point, is we were on the first. He wasn't there. Like, how was that going to happen? But in the Hero's Gauntlet, as you're going into the last section before the last boss, the Light Warriors show up, and there's off to the right, there's a chance that a familiar inspector shows up, and he's like, and if you run up to him, you see him say, where am I? Like, what's going on? And it's so great. I've shown so many. I actually was running a bunch of people through their first time a few weeks ago, and we got Hildibrand. I said, y'all are very lucky. I said, you got the special Hildibrand appearance. And they're like, wait, what? And so after we beat all the mobs, I ran them over and showed them. I said, you don't always get this. And they were like, oh, that's so cool. So it was great getting to show them that.
That does make me wonder, does Hildibrand have the echo?
I want to say yes.
Well, Elidibus brought him.
Elidibus was bringing Warriors of Light over. So Hildibrand is a Warrior of Light.
Yeah, I mean, and he actually is on the first and the Endwalker patches. Like, he's there in the first episode, and we have to get him out. So, like, it's not just a funny little tee reference. Like, it's canon. He's Warrior of Light and was called during the Hero's Gauntlet, which is hilarious to think of.
Yeah, I that's right. I forgot that he wasn't really in Shadowbringers. That feels. I know that's what happened. I lived it. I was there for it when we first discovered. Really, oh, wait, he's here, y'all. He's here. He's in Hero's Gauntlet. Like, look, he's right here. But now I'm like, oh right, we didn't really get him in Shadowbringers. Man, that.
Like, yeah, not even when we went back.
And I guess that is why one of the first things they mentioned, especially when they started introducing side content, was, I think it's yet even further Hildibrand Adventures or something like that, where it's even more or incomprehensibly more Hildibrand Adventures. Like, it's further Hildibrand Adventures. Like, it was yeah.
Because they never expected to do it past a certain point.
I get the impression that they continue to have that expectation. Like, Stormblood had a really cool setup with the little end dance. And then I guess they thought that was it, that people didn't want him for Shadowbringers, I guess, or didn't want to spend the energy and dev time to put it. But they brought him back in a big way for Endwalker. And they've said that they're going to bring him back for Dawn Trail. I guess personally, I feel like, why are you even like implying that he's not going to be back? Of course, like, they can't not put Hildibrand in every expansion from here until the end. Surely there's no way they can stop putting Hildibrand in this game. People would riot.
Yeah, I know. They've said how expensive he is, and I think it's one of those. It's like we'll bring him back if people want him, and they're just never really sure how much people want him until we ask about it. And I'm sure there might be a little less this time, because I know a lot of people were upset that you had to do all of it to do the relic weapon.
I mean, people have been upset about every little nitty gritty.
People are upset about everything, and yeah, let's not go there. But it's like, okay, yeah, I understand you don't want to do this, but it's fun content, and people that didn't want to do it, skip through it, and that's fine. That's perfectly valid. If you're not interested in it, fine. But it is so fun. It's fun, like, storytelling, and like we said, we get some really interesting trials out of it, and these are some of the trials that they get to experiment with, like, kind of like Criterion and Variant dungeons. They're getting to use those to bosses and things to experiment with new mechanics, and that's kind of what they did with this. Is they get to experiment with things to see how people react to it and like it, and then they can put it into other content. So
absolutely,
I want a Hildibrand Criterion Variant dungeon.
That'd be great.
I could see that happening.
We had a fairy with a whoopee cushion. Why do we not have a Hildibrand variant dungeon?
They're working on others. Give it time. Give it time.
Maybe instead of the trial next time, they can do that instead. I could accept that. That would let them bring like Ultras and Typhon back as side bosses. They could bring back Gilgamesh again. They maybe could do the bridge as part of it. I don't know. I mean, we've said before that just more variants would be great. To let them explore
It's true.
Places.
I'm just thinking of all the crazy mechanics if they actually just were able to just go all out with a Hildibrand thing.
We've always asked, we want a Godbert Julian primal fight. That could be a way for us to get it, but it could also be a way, because they're always like, you guys, you're not going to win. If you fight them, you're not going to win. They are very, very strong. They're going to beat you. But this could be a way to be like, they're not really trying so hard, or they're like simulations, or, something similar. But that could be how we get a Godbert Julian fight.
Yeah.
What they should do, it should be a variant dungeon in the back rooms or the underbelly of the Gold Saucer, where we have to go through all the failed attractions that they tried building and couldn't make work. And it should, in the final battle, or one of the optional battles, should be Blitzball.
Oh my God.
And so they no longer have to make actual Blitzball. It's now been referenced as a failed attraction. Don't worry about Blitzball anymore.
You hear that, Yoshi P? Hire Basil for the writing room.
Oh, I could also take some of the various things that you would have saw in the Final Fantasy XII minigames, like the sub minigame or like the motorcycle minigame. Some of those other stuff, or like the Moghome thing, and just make like failed versions of them that you have to walk through and do fights in. I think you could do some really fun stuff in like the part of the Gold Saucer you don't see.
I know this is a little bit of not a cop out, but if they don't want to make a full on variant dungeon where you'd have to do a criterion and all that, what if you did something similar to that for a Make It Rain event? Because they've done the little dungeon things for like Halloween, like we've repurposed the Huck Manor. We've done sort of a little thing like that. You could possibly make like a mini variant dungeon similar to what Basil's talking about for like a Make It Rain.
Look, I've been playing FF7 Rebirth, and the last thing I want to think about right now is Moghomes and minigames. You triggered me a little bit, Basil, mentioning that.
We haven't gotten there yet, so that's why he can say that.
I say it because I've been replaying 7, and I just got into the Gold Saucer.
Got it.
And on my little Retroid, I am actually right in front of the Moghome screen right now, and I've forgotten how to even do the thing. So that's...
Yeah, I think a beneath the Gold Saucer criterion would be a really cool idea. I like that. HCP, hire Basil. Let's make it happen.
That's right. But we've also gotten some really good crest wards also out of the Hildibrand stuff. 2 great dances between the Manderville dance and the Manderville Mambo. We've also gotten some cool minions like Gigi and the Poo Poo. The UFO mount is so good.
It's really great.
It's so good.
Like if you ever do a hunt train now, it's great to see all the UFOs.
I like the UFO mount. I don't like using the UFO mount because I have weird spatial issues with the UFO mount where I'm seeing where my character is, but where the UFO is. And it's so vertically oriented, it messes with me. But that's a very personal, my eyes don't like this. But I think it's a very incredibly cool mount in concept and even honestly in execution. And there is something, especially when the hunt trains were happening right as that final quest and those rewards hit, just watching an entire fleet of UFOs just flying across the map was a wonder to behold.
And you have on here what I feel like great rewards have been the relic weapons this time around. Despite people complaining about having to either do the Manderville quests or it just being a tome sync, these are some of the prettiest weapons we've had. Like every step of the way, I feel like they hit them out of the park every time. And the final step itself, they look beautiful, and I don't think I've heard anyone say they didn't like them.
Yeah, the final set, for all the ones that I've got at least, I really like. I do have to wonder why they didn't wait until we get to Solution 9, but I'm fine to having them now, to be completely honest with you.
And I get it. The idea for these were designed to be, sort of spacey, technologically advanced. They're from outer space weapons. They're something. They were supposed to be, visually striking, and I liked how for the final step, everyone got the same effect. Everyone got the same set of colors. Everyone got like the cool like circly and like hexagonal like graphics around them. I like the uniformity of them.
Yeah.
It's for me. I think it's really neat. I go into like a level 90 trial or dungeon or something, and since they are the best weapons you can get because you can choose their stats, almost everyone's always, unless you've glamored over it, everyone's rocking it, and it gives me sort of a yeah, man, Team Manderville. Heck yeah, we all got them. This is like it feels unifying in a way that I didn't think about weapons could be unifying in the game. Just seeing everyone rocking them, it just has been really, really nice to see. And I just was not expecting that.
I remember when they first announced that it was going to be tied to the Mandervilles. We were like, oh, these are going to be such joke weapons. Like, they're going to look so weird, or they're going to have, like, cactars on them for the gold saucer, or kind of like the gold saucer weapons, essentially. And we were excited to see what they would be, but not in that, okay, we're all going to use them because they look cool. But then they end up looking really cool. So I'm like, and I feel like they're very, while we've got, like, the alien aspect and everything, and it's definitely very Manderville, I feel like it's good elegant instead of bad elegant.
Good elegance.
And so instead of elegance, we have aliens. That's what we get.
And I agree completely. We kind of expected I remember everyone was expecting them to be really silly to sort of align with the Manderville family, but the fact they didn't go with that is interesting for sure.
And I also liked how in the Godbert side of these, because we've talked about like the funny haha Hildibrand side of the Endwalker Hildibrand quest, but then you also have the Godbert and Geralt side, where they are still goofy, but not as goofy. Like Hildibrand takes it to 11, and Godbert leaves it at a nice 9 to 10.
I think the humor is more toward comparing the Manderville family to Geralt. And he's always been sort of a funny character anyway, but it's a certain sort of like shtick of being a drunkard master blacksmith. So you look at his like sort of sleazy character combined with Godbrand and the way they interact with each other, they really play off each other as foils really well throughout the weapon quest.
I will say, I really enjoyed this expansion because it was fun getting to see him interact with Godbert and just getting a little bit to see him sort of be more fun, I guess. I mean, we see him with Rowena, we've seen him be kind of fun, but to see that story with him, and then for the Disciple of the Land in Hand relics, that story is one that I think so many people wanted to see. So Geralt really got a lot of good screen time this expansion.
It's also a strange, but not bad, counterbalance to Bazia's storyline, which was a cool war epic, kind of dark at times, very overall pretty serious. And that was the last time we really dealt with Geralt. Now it's with Godbert. And so you don't, because it's two expansions apart, there's a little bit of tonal whiplash, I suppose, but it is sort of nice to see him just having a good time and learning how to crack a smile without having to get drunk for it for once versus, epic war story.
The whole last cutscene with them doing the dance together in unison and him just giving into it was great.
It's good stuff. And for me, Hildibrand has never missed. And one of the things that I don't think we've really talked too much about besides Hildibrand are the other folks. We've talked about Hildibrand, we've talked about Godbert, we have not talked about Nashu enough.
Oh, I agree.
Is what I'm saying. Nashu is like the most perfect companion to Hildibrand that one could ever ask for. She's always there for him, and if needed, she can pull out a bomb like with a snap of the finger. Like she's ready for it at all times. She's ready to blow shit up.
I don't know if you guys have ever watched Bakano, the anime Bakano, but Hildy and Nashu reminded me a lot of Isaac and Miria characters from Bakano. Like you can see the big doofus dude character and their sidekick. I think I mean like the big doofus like woman, like something that hits harder for me than just having it be a pair of goofuses. And something about like Nashu being just as stupid as Hildibrand and being there with all of his stupid stunts. I think it just makes her a great character. It makes them a great combination of characters. And I love seeing the way they interact. I love that in a lot of those cutscenes where he's pontificating on something or another, you see her like nodding off and like sleeping, or she like does a little like, I guess it's sort of the Mikote sort of dance where she just like throws her arms up, her tail still on end. Like it's something that just feels like a very Nashu action. And like with all the other jokes, they stick with it from beginning to end. I think that really helps make her character stand out to me.
I remember doing the ARR Hildibrand stuff, and there was a couple of scenes in Costa del Sol's portion where there's just a moment where she just keeps pulling out bombs. She just keeps pulling out bombs. They keep, and just when you think, okay, they're done with the bomb joke, no, there's another bomb. And I was just, I was almost literally on the floor laughing with just the sheer amount of bombs being produced for this joke, and just how they kept just hitting the nail with the hammer with bombs. And it was just like, this is never go away. This is just so good. And there's always at least a couple of moments in every Hildibrand quest chains that get me. Like it's so good. Hildibrand's great, Nashu's great, and then in Endwalker, they introduce the character Brandy Hild. And just when I thought this cast couldn't get better, no, they add on the weird defective clone of Hildibrand that's actually smarter than him, but still stupid.
Yeah, I love that they didn't just introduce him with a one time. They brought him back for each of the Endwalker patches, and he seems to be canon now. He's not going away, so I'd love to see that.
Yeah, there was some great cosplays of him at FanFest.
Oh, there was, yeah.
Like, those were wonderful.
I didn't know what it was at the time because I hadn't done anything yet. So I thought people were just doing we're just doing a PS1 Hildibrand as a joke, I guess. I didn't get it, but turns out it's in the game.
Were there any other moments of Hildibrand that we've not already covered that any of y'all would like to mention?
You talked about the Nashu bit, and I think that the one scene I think stands out for me in Stormblood is when you're having to sneak in that one like dinner or something, and I think you're having to make her up to be like a geisha, but then Hildibrand also has the
Yes.
idea to be a geisha.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like such a good little part.
And I know Anna really enjoyed seeing the return of the frying pan.
Oh yeah, like I said, that was one of my favorite moments. I want that as a warrior weapon. One of my favorites is definitely in Heaven's Ward with the dragoons that they've got younger, and then Hildibrand comes like dressed as like when it was sort of like a knight of the round, and does his limit break thing with them, and or he gets they limit break him, and he survives. It was really, I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen it, but that whole thing was so much fun, and I wish Gigi would come back. That is one character I would like to see come back because we haven't seen him since then. Maybe bring back the Scholastica guys some.
Yeah, that's right. Because the other inspector, the real inspector from the end of ARR, he gets his own thing in Heavensward.
Yep, because that's where you get like the glasses emote and everything.
Yeah, the Harry Potter school, basically.
Yeah.
They actually spun him off into his own real quest line, and I don't think they've done that with any of the other side characters really since. I mean, I guess if you count the relic weapons maybe as a spin-off, but yeah, I would love to see them spin off some more stuff. Like you said, bring Gigi back, or whatever they do for Dawn Trail. Like, introduce new characters and let them be in the story aside from the Hildibrand shenanigans.
Yeah, that was Briarden.
Briarden, yeah.
Briarden.
So, well, the classic side story quest started in 3.15. That was actually before we started getting more Hildibrand. I really do wonder if they initially were just going to do his stuff that was going to be the equivalent of Hildibrand, but everyone wanted the goofy Hildibrand stuff. They're like, okay, look, we got you. All right, we got it. All right, we hear you. All right. Okay, more Hildibrand. Hildibrand. Okay. But I really did like Bryden's stuff. It was a neat little actual inspector story. And I would not mind more of it. And again, or give us a Gigi storyline, or give us more adventures with Poo Poo, or weird aliens are bad guy, or what have you. Like, bring some of these folks back. Why not? Or give us a Hildibrand side story, or a Brandy Hill side story. That sounds fun. Have Brandy Hill with the weird, creepy Lalafell kid, doing their thing. And have it all culminate in a new variant dungeon. in the Battles of Gold Saucer. So that's where I think Hildibrand should go in Dawn Trail. But where do y'all want him to go in Dawn Trail?
Well, I think Anna already decided on the big bridge, the new big bridge.
Oh, yeah.
The biggest bridge. And I got to agree there. I don't... We know it's going to be in the patches. So I think a lot of that will depend on what actually happens for real in Dawn Trail, which we don't really know. He's going to be in the New World doing New World stuff, but it would be cool if they maybe tied him into whatever the Blue Mage stuff is going to be. Like, it doesn't have to be tied to that quest specifically, but if we get a Blue Mage village or a commune or whatever in Tyrol, maybe having them be adjacent to it. Because I think so much of Hildibrand is also tying in the classic Final Fantasy references that are more silly, like Gilgamesh, like Ultras. So I think if we were to do something like, what's the one from 9? The frog lady.
Queena?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're pretty sure we're gonna see like her and Dansha and Turo, right? So that would be a perfect like slam dunk to have like her show up next to adjacent to Hildibrand.
Yeah, that would be good. And she cooks things, so frying pan.
Exactly. It's already a good little connection there.
I could see them that being a good, introduce the queue. Yeah, why not? That sounds good. Shoot, I also would not even mind just some just good old fish out of water, stranger in a strange land. Hildibrand stuff, just being so impressed and enamored by everything around him.
Yeah.
And just when he is so lost, and all of a sudden Nashu's there for some reason, like that also sounds good.
She's definitely going to show up on the boat in Tyrol at some point, pretty much the same way she did in Kugane. Like she's going to show up looking for him, and then we follow her to find out he's probably buried half deep in the jungle somewhere, as you do.
Man, I kind of want. I don't forget. Did she bust out of a barrel like Luffy during the Kagane stuff? Because that'd be good if something happens and there just happens to be a barrel that washes ashore and she explodes out of it like Monkey D. Luffy. I think that'd be a good scene. Yoshida's a One Piece fan. Like I could see that happening.
Absolutely. All right, it's Tobias one more time from the edit bay. I told you I'd be coming back with one last little treat, and here we are. So on the initial recording, we had some technical difficulties and weren't able to record our normal outro. So Basil tried to do that at MTAC, and while the audio wasn't great, I thought it was still pretty fun and had plenty of character, just like a certain Manderville Man, so I wanted to include it anyway. I'm sure by this point most of you all know how to reach us on the internet, but if not, Basil's here to tell you.
This has been your Manderville Minute, your podcast for everything awesome. Nope, that's not it. Leave that one in for Tobias as a special treat. This has been yet another wonderful episode of the Manderville Minute, your podcast for everything gentlemanly in Final Fantasy XIV. The theme song for the Chronicle was a remix of the Awesome Cast, composed by James. You can find his stuff at djdebuto.com, and arranged by Anna. However, the Manderville Minute theme is, of course, Agent of Inquiry by Masayoshi Soken, who composed and arranged it. You can find this Manderville Minute, the Chronicle, and all our other podcasts at awesomecast.com, where you can find things on there like our Patreon. You can also join our Discord off there or check out our shorts at our TeePublic site. Please also, if you're so inclined, leave us reviews on wherever you find podcasts that you can leave reviews on. Thanks, and until next time, we'll see you soon.